Welcome to the Piston Fanatic. I'm your host, Dave Dalton, and I'm excited to share my passion and perspective of our Detroit Pistons as we go on this fantastic voyage together. I've been a diehard Piston fan since the days of Dave Bing and Bob Lanier. I've also been the varsity basketball coach of a very successful program in northern Michigan. I want to thank all of you for listening. Please subscribe and like. Our Pistons moved to above 500 again, 27 and 26. With a 112 to 102 victory over the Charlotte Hornets. So we jumped out. We looked like this machine. We looked like this impressive team. We were passing the ball around, sharing the ball. Everybody was making every shot. We were up by 28. And in the fourth quarter, they cut it to 2. And our Pistons really, I talk often on this podcast about human nature, and doesn't mean that it's acceptable. JB certainly think it wasn't acceptable that we let them back into the game and let it get down to a 2-point game because they were playing without like anybody. LaMelo didn't play, and Brandon Miller's out for the year, and Mark Williams that they just traded to the Lakers for a bunch of stuff. The trade got rescinded, so he was back. Then their starting center is Diamante, who's a pretty good player. He went to University of Michigan, and 7 minutes into the game, Stu hit him in the face and accidentally, inadvertently, and he left the game and never returned. And so they're out there playing with Taj Gibson will be 40 really soon, and he played with the Pistons a little bit last year. I got a big kick out of it last year when they brought in Gibson, and the first game after they brought him we got him, picked him up off waivers, I think, and then Wiseman had a great game, and everybody credited Taj Gibson's veteran leadership and that he made him play well all of a sudden. So that was, I thought, pretty funny. But anyway, he's hardly played any in the last like 5 years, and here he comes out there. He has to play 20 minutes, and we still let him back in the game. And Seth Curry, who's a nice player, but he scored 20, and he's 34 years old. He's not very tall. And Bridges had 30, so he, from Flint and Michigan State, so he had a good game. But anyway, we just very disappointed that we were just lackluster. CADE was lackluster, just to be honest. He had a triple-double, so that's always, sometimes I think people make too big of a deal about triple-doubles. I mean, he's a good player. He's a great all-around player. He's an all-star. I'm not saying I love CADE, but, everybody let off the gas and just was nonchalant, and they just, we let him back in the game. We didn't play with any fire at all. And, it's one thing that you see the game getting them catching up, and it's like, this isn't going to happen. This is going to happen. Like I said, we're up by 28. We're up by way over 20 in the third quarter even, and we just just stopped playing kind of. But anyway, it was a fun game. The first part was really fun. Like I said, we really shared the ball. We were really energetic, and I love Ausar and Holland. You hear me say that every podcast about. They just keep getting better. And Greg Kelser brought up a great point that they were kind of like Rodman and Sally, and if you got to watch those teams play, they would come in and they would just energize our team, and they just turned the game. They didn't start a lot of times, and finally they ended up starting Rodman. But in the fourth quarter of games, we would play Rodman and Sally, and every team would score like 17 points on us in the fourth quarter. It just happened over and over again. Our fourth quarter defense. So even though other guys started, they would close with Rodman and Sally. Ausar and Holland have more offensive upside than those guys. They're not quite as tall. They're not going to rebound as much. Not going to block as many shots, probably, but they still are remarkable. And any team that's great, just about any team that I know that's great, they get a little bit lucky. You're smart and you're lucky, like the Warriors, where they are smart. They drafted Steph, I think was like 7th pick in the draft his year, and Clay was like 18, and Draymond was in the second round. And Denver, they won with Jokic, and he was drafted in the second round. And just a bunch of teams get guys that are drafted later, but they make good choices. But it's still fortunate when you are able to get guys like, even with the 5th pick, that can turn out. And I think these guys can turn out. I think we're just seeing the beginning, and they're going to just keep on getting better. It's really fascinating to follow, and especially when you watch these young players, rookies, second year, third year players, how many ups and downs they have. And that's why it's amazing that we have this young team with 3 veterans that are doing so well. And yeah, Schroder played today, so okay, they asked him about Schroder, and he said what a high IQ he had and how versatile he is, and he hit a big 3 late in the game. So But it's what I predicted, that some people thought Sasser might get to play, but Sasser played 0 minutes and Schroder played 15 minutes. And I expect his minutes might even go up a little bit. They did play him with CADE a little bit, so yeah, it gives us another weapon that we can use and another veteran. And like I mentioned before, he's fearless. He's very confident. He's been tested in a lot of big games internationally and in the NBA. And I think he is going to be a great pickup. He seemed to have fun playing out there with the guys, and it was really cool. So yeah, yeah. Cade said that we needed to wake up and get locked in, and so that was it's hard. It's hard to watch. It was disappointing, but it's another win. And again, you have to beat these teams. But uh, one thing I just have to mention this, because I don't know if we play the Hornets again or not. But LaMelo is a great player. He's gifted. So they just beat. LaMelo played Friday night, and they beat Sacramento. And our record's better than Sacramento, and they have Wemby. And of course, Wemby's great. He is phenomenal. And can you imagine if we would have gotten lucky and gotten him? I mean, it just pains me to think about that, because him and Cade would have been together. That would have been greatest duo ever. But anyway, we don't have him, so I love the guys that we do have. But here's what, when I watch LaMelo play, because he's so gifted and he can pass and he can shoot and he takes these crazy shots. But I love the movie White Men Can't Jump, and there's a line when Woody Harrelson tells Wesley Snipes, he says, "You'd rather look good and lose. Wait, you'd rather look good and lose than look bad and win." And that's kind of the kind of player he is. That kind of defines, in my opinion, who he is. So, um, and he is great. So I'm not denying that. So anyway, we had a lot of great. Tobias came out in the first quarter. He ended up with 20 points, but he had 14 in the first quarter, and he was like 6 for 6 and made a couple of free throws. Duren, another phenomenal game. 16 points, 12 rebounds, 6 assists. So I think in the last 3 games, so he had 6 assists today. I think the last game he might have led our team with assists with 5, and then I think he had a game with 7. So I think in the last 3 games he might have averaged 6 assists over the last 3 games. Good math on my part. But anyway, he has played better, and everybody's talking about it, and they talked to Cade about it, and Cade said, we're taking off and we've gotten better, and part of the big reason for our improvement is that Duren is playing so well. So that's true. So we play the Bulls Tuesday and Wednesday before the All-Star break, and the Bulls are a fascinating team. The consensus around the NBA is the Bulls don't know what they're doing. Their front office doesn't know what they're doing. Are they going to reboot and try to rebuild, or are they going to just stay there and try to stay around 500 and squeak into the play-in? And they didn't trade Vucevic. They traded Levine, and they re-signed LaMelo, even though a lot of teams he's not an expiring contract now, but they re-signed him for 2 years, which he's a good player. Again, I wanted us to get him, but they got like 5 point guards or 5 or 6 point guards on their team, and they don't have very many forwards, and they just are. Nobody knows what the direction of their organization is. But anyway, they have talent. They have some guys that can play. Kobe White can play. Vucevic can light you up, and they have other guards that can play. Giddey is not always consistent, but he's a good player. He can he can rebound, he can pass, he can score. Not a great 3-point shooter, but anyway, so it'll be funny. Back to back, both games are in Chicago. They both start at 8 o'clock, and then we have the All-Star game, and we got Ausar playing on Friday night, and we got CADE in the 3-point shootout. But this is interesting. CADE has struggled so bad in the last 2 weeks, and tonight again he was 1 for 5 on threes, and I don't know how the NBA works it and why they don't take Beasley. Beasley has made 150 catch and shoot threes, and that's like 30 more than the second closest guy. So another interesting thing, our Pistons, even with slow-mo CADE, he's not the fastest guy, but we're second in the NBA in fast break points. So that's really cool, and I love seeing when we get out and run, and we got the guys that can do it. Duren's great at rim running. Ausar can fly, and when Holland gets going on the break, I still don't quite get. I wasn't sure. I didn't think that Holland was going to be this good this fast. I felt like he kind of got lucky that Ausar was hurt at the beginning of the season, so he got plenty of time because I didn't know where he was going to get minutes from, and he has just played really well, and he played great tonight. But still, he played 13 minutes, so I hard to question JB, but we have Tobias, and I know Holland's not a power forward, but he plays 34 minutes. He played great again. Tobias was 9 for 13, so don't get me wrong, he's played great for us, and he's a stabilizing force for us. But yeah, JB said it was unacceptable the way we let them back in the game. And another little interesting tidbits. I like these little tidbits. I don't know if you guys appreciate them when I do them on my podcast, but things like I watched a lot of games on League Pass, and there was a team, they said they had drawn 7 offensive fouls, their team had, for the season total. And we got Tim Hardaway Jr. that's drawn like 15. So, he's drawn double what the whole team did for the other team. But yeah, so we got shout out to Coach Izzo. I love Coach Izzo. I don't really think he's this brilliant basketball savant, but he is certainly, over the test of time, gets his guys to play, gets to play hard. He has a great culture. I've heard him speak at least a dozen times, and I enjoy him. I appreciate him. He loves our state, and he's a big promoter of the state of Michigan, and he's done great things for Michigan State basketball, and their team's looking really good this year. But yeah, Trajan, he's talking about, somebody said, some other general manager was saying how we got one of the top 5 locker rooms in the NBA, and everywhere you go, everywhere you see, you watch the players and you hear them talk, and they all are just, ESPN, man, they were all about, somehow they know all about Detroit and our locker room and how good our culture is, and they were talking about how you better come to play against the Pistons. And I mean, I think that's part of the reason why we get in so many fights, because people are threatened by us. So yeah, they asked CADE about it too, and CADE said how much fun they have playing together and how much they love each other and they care about each other and they have each other's backs. You hear those same things all the time, and it makes it more fun to watch. I mean, you could be a Suns fan, and so the Suns, going into last year, not going into last year, here they had Booker and Durant and Beal, 3 of the great offensive players, and their team is toxic, and they have nowhere to go. Matt Ishbia, that played at Michigan State, brought the team, and a lot of people were giving him props. He came in right away and made the deal to get Durant, but they have a bad situation because they wanted to trade Beal, but Beal has a no trade clause. They talked about trading Durant, and Durant didn't want to go to Golden State, but anyway, they just have a whole bunch of things that's there. They're about a 500 team like we are, but they have no future draft picks, and they have all these guys that are old that are for so much money. And it would not shock me. I mean, I always laughed at people that said we're going to get Devin Booker, and because he does love Michigan, and he always represents our state too. He's from Grand Rapids area, but they could be going so bad in a couple years that we could get him in a couple years. And again, a couple years might be when it's time for us to throw in, put our chips on the table and go all in and try to go for get a great player like that. And I don't know what year exactly he becomes a free agent. But anyway, Ausar and Holland, I don't think I said this, they were 8 for 10 in the first half on shots. They were 8 for 10, so that was pretty crazy. But Ausar played 23 minutes, 7 for 9. 7 for 9. But the downside was he's 2 for 5 on free throws. His shot looks better. He needs to get more arc on it. I know I say it every time, but he had 8 rebounds, 5 offensive. And so he just gets those extra possessions. Offensive rebounds are one of the most valuable commodities in the NBA, to get extra possessions. If you get an offensive rebound, that means you don't have to play defense. You don't have to get the defensive rebound. You don't have to expend the energy to get a stop. And almost always after offensive rebounds, they lead to easy buckets. Even if it's the rebounder kicks it to someone else and for a 3 or for a cutter to the basket. And Ausar is so phenomenal about cutting. And I'll tell you, everybody's talked about, we're worried about spacing, and spacing does matter, and this team is proof of that. What a difference that Hardaway and Beasley have made. But JB's playing Duren, Ausar, and Holland together. Not for long, 'cause of course Holland only plays 14 minutes, so he 13 minutes tonight. So how he can't play them too much together, but they did play them together, and so I think that and then if you get Ivy out there with his speed, that's going to be a track meet. Yeah. So anyway, he had a great game. Ausar had a great game. He needs to. I still want him to play 30 minutes, and he had like I said, 8 rebounds, 4 assists. He shares it, and he had 2 steals and 16 points, and he can put up numbers, and he can put up and change the game. And I just think he could be just a star player and a key component of a championship team. Tobias, 34 minutes, 9 for 13. Again, he made 6 of his first 6 shots, 1 for 2 on threes, 1 for 1 on free throws, 4 rebounds, 1 assist, 20 points. Duren, 31 minutes, 6 for 10, 4 for 4 from the line, 12 rebounds, 5 offensive. Him and Stu battle for him all the time. Every shot that goes up at the offensive end, they are down there fighting the war, and they don't, every possession they do it. And even though he got 5 tonight, usually you're lucky, rarely you get 5, but he still puts all that effort in and comes away with only 5. But that's what it takes to get offensive rebounds. But again, 6 assists is phenomenal. He had 1 steal and only 1 turnover, which is really big because he has had a little bit of a problem last year and part of this year with turnover. So he had 16 points. Hardaway Jr., 30 minutes, 36, 3 for 6, 2 for 4 on threes, 2 rebounds, 1 assist, 2 steals, 8 points. And so again, I'm not a Hardaway hater. He played 30 minutes, but I'm just saying, give Ausar and Holland some of his minutes. That's all I'm saying. Play him 24 minutes. Maybe you worry that what that will do to the locker room. So Beasley, 26 minutes, 6 for 16, 5 for 14. So he shot bad. He made his first 3. So he shot really bad after he shot his first 3. But the honest thing is, 5 for 14 doesn't sound good. That's still 37%, and so, or 36%. So it still is winning basketball if you make 36% of your threes. He had 2 rebounds, 0 assists for Beasley, but he had 26 points, or 17 points, excuse me, 2 steals. Stu played 17 minutes, and they say this, he's such a valuable part of our team, but he has games like this, 17 minutes, 1 for 3, 0 for 2 on threes. He was wide open. I'm glad he shot him. 3 rebounds, 1 assist. So he didn't do much, but so I talked about that guy Diamante that played at Michigan State. He's a real good athlete, plays real hard, but Stu completely hit him in the face accidentally, and so they review it, and then they end up giving Stu a technical, and they said when they spoke into the mic, when the official spoke into the mic, he said it was unintentional, but he gets a technical. And so they wouldn't have even done that. It wasn't even, they didn't even whistle a foul on the play, but when they reviewed it, because the other guy fell down to the floor and held his face. And he did hit him in the face, but it was completely inadvertent. And they call him a technical. So that's the problem. Stu has done enough pushing and enough things that people are watching him. And now he's treated unfairly. I could hear it. There was some mic somewhere close to the stands that picked up a fan saying that's bull, whatever, and you're roughing the reputation. That's what they said, and that's what they're doing. So anyway, that's too bad for Stu. But yeah, Schroder played 15 minutes. He's only 1 for 4, but again, the one shot was a 3 in the fourth quarter when things were close. CADE just had made a basket to put us up by a couple, and then I think I don't know, put it up by 3 or what it put us up by. But anyway, Schroder hit the big 3. It put us up by 7 or 8. So that was at a crucial time. But he had 3 assists and 5 points. He was 2 for 2 from the line. And I already said Holland, 13 minutes, 4 for 9, 1 for 6 on threes. He rushed some. He passed up some. It's going to be a work in progress. But again, my take is with him and Ausar that you play him and you live with whatever happens. And again, if it's a tight game and they're not playing good, then play them a little bit less. And then otherwise, if they're playing good, play them more. So um, anyway, another thing I really loved, these players, we watch games, and Jalen Duren, they interviewed him after the game, and um, it meant something to me that he said everybody should have got to play tonight. And so he's in the interview after the game, they're praising him for his great game. And what is he thinking about? The guys that are at the end of the bench that, and I thought they should get to play. I was sure they were going to get to play. And this game, especially, and we were up by 28, and we looked like a varsity team playing against a JV team, and then we let them just keep crawling back into the game. So I'm going to end the podcast with something. I want you to put it in the comments if you remember this. It just, when you watch sports for all your life and you watch so much sports, there was one point when Ausar was 7 for 7. And for whatever reason, that triggered the Detroit Tigers had a shortstop named Cesar Gutierrez. And there was one game, the Tigers were playing a doubleheader that one day. And in one of the games, he was 7 for 7 batting. And so if any of you remember Cesar Gutierrez going 7 for 7 in a game for the Tigers, put a comment. I'd like to see that. So anyway, you're old if you do that. But thank you for listening. Looking forward to the Bulls, and hopefully we can beat them. Again, human nature. What could have been that we were really flat this game because they had all their players missing, all their best players, but we came out smoking. But human nature, you can't play. And I coached a lot of teams where like we come out play on fire and we just be blowing teams out. And then my teams pressed a lot, and I take off the press and I start subbing everybody, and then we went flat almost always. And you still had to do it. You're still not going to press when you're way up, and you're still going to let everybody play because they deserve to. But it's just human nature. And here's another thing about human nature. Human nature is when two teams play each other back to back, they're anywhere close to each other, there's bound to be a split. So I hope it's not a split. I hope our Pistons, because we're better than they are, I hope we play tough and play well enough and take both of them. But like I said, human nature is unstoppable. So thank you for listening. And I really mean that. Tell another Piston fan, if you know another Piston fan, about this podcast if you can, and be the reason that somebody feels listened and heard. And go Pistons.